Ash is a Pokemon trainer who has had a lot of teams, and each of those teams have had star Pokemons, and all those Pokemon have backstories, with some of them being pretty tragic. So this is the story of some of the greatest rises and falls in the Pokemon franchise, starting off with the original ace, Charizard. But to understand where this all started, we have to take it back to Season 1 of the Pokemon anime. This season takes place in the Kanto region, where Ash is our main character on his very first Pokemon journey, and for lack of a better words, he's dumb. He's an inexperienced new 10-year-old trainer that doesn't know how to raise Pokemon. But the thing about Ash is that he's a kid with a heart, and when he sees a dying Pokemon out in the rain, he's gonna go save him, and that's exactly what happened to Charmander. Early on Ash's journey, he meets Charmander on a rock. He looks pretty sick and sad, but he won't move at all. Ash tries to catch this Charmander and bring him to a Pokemon Center since he's sick and clearly needs help, but Charmander refuses to move from this rock, let alone getting caught. After multiple unsuccessful attempts to save the Charmander's life, Pikachu comes over and lets the gang know that Charmander says that it actually has an owner and it's waiting for him to return. Skeptical, the gang stays over at a local place to keep watch at Charmander, waiting for its owner to return. When the gang pulls up at this spot, they meet Damien. They overhear him talking about how he abandoned a Charmander because he was too weak, and this is just crazy to me because imagine in real life if you pull up to a hotel and a group of people are flexing that they beat and abandoned their dog. With Ash and Brock being the only two sensible people in the room, Brock goes up to Damien and presses him. Brock tells Damien he should go back and get his Pokemon because he's going to die since it's raining outside, and when Charmanders lose the fire on their tail, they die. Damien just doesn't seem to care, so Ash, Brock, and Misty go out and rescue Charmander. When they finally find Charmander, they find that he's getting beaten to death by an army of sparrows. Pikachu uses Thunder Shock on the sparrows, and they wrap Charmander in a blanket to preserve the fire on his tail so he doesn't die. Charmander is holding on to his life. They manage to bring Charmander to Nurse Joy, and she heals him right up. But later that night, Charmander escapes because he is shocked that Damien actually abandoned him. Charmander unfortunately develops Stockholm Syndrome, where despite the abuse Damien has done towards him, he still wants to go back to Damien since it feels like home. And to be honest, Damien is a straight bum. To hurt such a powerful and loyal Pokemon like this, especially in the Kanto region, Damien definitely fumbled for whatever trash he has on his team. While Charmander was roaming around, he encounters Team Rocket, which has just captured Pikachu. Charmander uses Flamethrower to defeat Team Rocket and free up Pikachu, repaying his debt to Ash. And this bum Damien was lurking around the corner, saw how powerful Charmander really is, and switched up, saying he wanted to get Charmander back on his team. Damien started gaslighting Charmander into believing that he was searching for Charmander the entire time and that he was coming back. Charmander is sick of the lies and refuses to join Damien's team. Damien gets salty and cusses out Charmander by telling him that he was never coming back for him and that he's weak and worthless. Charmander gets his get back by hitting Damien with a flamethrower and joining Ash's team in the end, since Ash was the only nice trainer to him. And that should be the end of that story, right? Ash saves Charmander from his abusive trainer, Charmander joins Ash's team, they get along, are loyal, and become the best of friends and a star Pokemon of Ash's team. But not all stories have the best endings. While Charmander was traveling along Ash's team, he was actually pretty grateful to be on the squad and helped Ash a lot and listened like all the other Pokemon. They even had a really wholesome moment where Ash was stranded in a cave due to a blizzard, and Charmander saved him and all the other Pokemon's lives by keeping them warm because of the fire on his tail. Ever since then, Charmander seriously became Ash's #1 Pokemon. He consistently used them throughout every episode, defeating tons of Pokemon he seriously shouldn't have beaten, like this Golem, and he was seriously getting way ahead of level compared to all of Ash's Pokemon. Charmander could honestly 1v5 them. Because of Charmander's proficient dominance on Ash's team, there's an episode where they go to a city with a bunch of Executors. Charmander uses Flamethrower and defeats a bunch of Executors, giving him a lot of XP, which caused him to evolve into Charmeleon. At first, this would be seen as a good thing, since Pokemon evolving is always good, right? But the once innocent, loyal, and strong Charmander we once knew was now gone, since Charmeleon didn't care about Ash anymore. This was the start of his downfall. If you've only watched the Pokemon anime, you may have been confused on why Ash's Charmeleon didn't want to listen to him anymore after evolving, but if you played the Pokemon games, you may know this feeling all too well. In the Pokemon games, there's a mechanic where the number of gym badges you have as a trainer directly correlates to how strong of a Pokemon you can use. This is to prevent new trainers from using super high level Pokemon they really should not have access to, and that's basically what happened to Ash. Charmeleon redeemed Ash unworthy of his power and just stopped listening to him. In Charmeleon's eyes, things are gonna work on his term and his terms only, and he doesn't really care what Ash has to say. Charmeleon's rebellious phase was getting out of control, and Ash came to realize this. Along their journey, Ash wanted to help another trainer evolve their Paris, and he sent out Charmeleon to have a friendly battle. Keyword friendly. Charmeleon just didn't care at all and wanted all the smoke and completely went overboard with this Paris. After that mishap, Charmeleon shot his fire at Ash. It got so bad, Ash had to send out Pikachu to deal with Charmeleon to prove that he's not that guy. Ash was pretty sad about this, since his once beloved Charmander that was once a staple on his team is such a bratty Charmeleon that wouldn't even listen to a single instruction. Ash decided to give Charmeleon one last chance against Paris to help him evolve, and when he sent out Charmeleon, he went even crazier, and if he did not bump into Paris's poison needle, that Paris would have been dead. After that, Ash had to decide to make Charmeleon take a bit of a backseat for now and let him chill off and figure out what's actually going on with this Pokemon. And that was it for Charmeleon. Ash made the smart decision to not bring out Charmeleon for a very long time, and the only time Charmeleon saw the light of day is when Ash was in a life or death situation and had to bring out one of his final Pokemon, Charmeleon. Ash was being chased by fossil Pokemon that wanted to kill him, and when Charmeleon finally came out, he just looked there smug. He didn't care about Ash's life, he didn't care about this situation, and he low-key just wanted to sleep. One of the fossil Pokemon, Aerodactyl, was a menace and kidnapped Ash and Pikachu and swatted Charmeleon on the way out. This hurt Charmeleon's ego so bad it challenged Aerodactyl to a 1v1. Aerodactyl didn't really view Charmeleon as anything and just emoted on him again, and this pissed off Charmeleon a lot, evolving him into the Charizard we know today. And this Charizard was a beast. It was so powerful it was able to defeat Aerodactyl and even save Ash. For a moment, Ash thought that everything was back to normal. Its Charizard saved him from the bottom of his heart because its trainer was in trouble, but in reality, Charizard only evolved because its ego got hurt, not because Ash got kidnapped. So, nothing really changed with Ash and Charizard's dynamic. Charizard was still at the back of Ash's team as this wild card and not the forefront that he used to be. But this all changed when Ash went to the 7th gym leader. Ash challenged Blaine, the 7th gym leader, to a Pokemon battle, and he sent out his Charizard, a risky move, and Charizard just chilled on the side and he didn't care, up until he saw Blaine's Magmar. This Magmar stopped the Volcano Crisis, gaining the respect of Charizard, and Charizard challenged him to a 1v1, considering Magmar his first worthy opponent. In this fight, we saw the true power of Charizard. Him and Magmar went head to head, even fighting in lava, and Charizard revealed his signature move, Seismic Toss, ending the battle and proving that he is the strongest fire Pokemon on Blaine's Island. It was nice for Charizard to finally deem someone a worthy opponent and show us how powerful he truly is. To be honest, Charizard must be like level 60 while everyone else is level 40. Ash was then appointed the Fire Gym Badge by Blaine. Finally, maybe something that would be able to prove his worth to Charizard. But even after Ash getting this badge, Charizard did not respect him at all, and it was back to the same old same old. Charizard cannot get over the fact that this 10-year-old kid could improve, and he will always view Ash lower than him. Now, every side has two stories, and we never actually looked at it from Charizard's perspective. How did Charizard develop this ideology? It's simply because of the trauma he got from his old trainer. Charizard got abandoned because he was considered weak and not good enough, and now that he finally has the power and is strong and can body practically anybody, he's scared that if he becomes complacent and listens to a trainer like Ash, it'll end up making him weak and he'll get abandoned all over again, repeating the cycle. So we didn't see Charizard for a while, and the only other Pokemon we've ever seen Ash's Charizard fight after that point was Mewtwo and his clone Pokemon, where Mewtwo is obviously the strongest Pokemon in that region, and Charizard had to challenge himself in the Pokemon movie against Mewtwo and the Charizard clone. In this Pokemon movie, if you didn't know, Ash actually died and got turned to stone, and Charizard and the rest of the Pokemon cried, and this is very monumental to Charizard's character, since this is the first time we've seen him show genuine affection towards Ash, since him losing his life is pretty sad. But Ash came back to life and Charizard went back to being his old self. But this brings us to the height of Charizard's career. the Indigo League, a tournament where trainers around the region come together and fight to have a chance to verse the Elite Four and proving who's the best of the best in the Kanto region. This is a big moment in Ash's career and an even bigger moment for Charizard since he only wants to verse strong Pokemon, so only strong Pokemon should be here, right? The Indigo League had over 200 participants and Ash brought along Pikachu, Pidgeotto, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Krabby, and Charizard as his 6th Pokemon on his team. And Ash took this tournament super seriously, making it out of the top 200, being one of the finalists in the top 16. And throughout all the battles leading up to this, he didn't use his Charizard once. He knew he was a wild card and wanted to play it safe by using his loyal and reliable Pokemon, which may have been his downfall. For this top 16 round, Ash is going up against a kid named Richie, and they're down to their final Pokemon. Ash only has Charizard left, while Richie has Charmander and Pikachu. And to be honest, how did this kid even make it to the top 16 with his weak team? But I'll digress. Ash takes the risk and sends out his Charizard in front of thousands of people at the live tournament event. And Charizard listened to Ash. He actually defeated Richie's Charmander with ease since Charizard is way stronger than Richie's entire team. But then Richie sends out his star Pokemon, Pikachu, or Zippy. Charizard was far from impressed from his matchup. He has the power to beat this Pikachu, but he's just disappointed that this is what everything was leading up to, him versing a couple first and second stage level Pokemon, rather than him fighting strong Pokemon like the Magmar he met back at Blaine's Island. So instead of Charizard swiftly taking care of this Pikachu so they can fight stronger trainers the farther they go up in the tournament, he chooses the nuclear option. Charizard throws it all away at the height of his career and refuses to battle. Charizard's actions resulted in Ash getting eliminated from the Indigo League, the thing that they were working up for so long, all over his pride. Now that's where the story would have ended for most trainers, including myself. If I got that amount of disrespect in front of a tournament, that lizard is off my team. But that's not where it ended for Ash. Ash still had a little bit of hope in Charizard and kept him on his team. He didn't treat him any differently, he was patient with him and worked with him. In the Orange Islands the next season after the Indigo League, there was a glimmer of hope for Charizard. Ash was versing a pretty strong Poliwrath and sends out Charizard, but Charizard doesn't want to listen until Charizard gets one up by the Poliwrath, getting frozen and defeated. This was one of the first times Charizard felt true defeat. He lost a fight because of his own incompetence, even though Ash trusted him. But Ash didn't dwell on Charizard's loss at all. He was actually more concerned about Charizard's health since he took on a full Ice Beam from the Poliwrath and is potentially dangerous for Charizard. Ash stayed up all night healing Charizard, being with him and keeping him warm, and Charizard realized that Ash really did care for him and Ash wanted the best for him and didn't care if he won or lost. So since Charizard finally saw the good in Ash, he threw away his abusive past with Damien and looked forward towards the future with Ash. And when they teamed up, they were stronger than ever. The next day, when they were working together, they bodied the Poliwrath, and Charizard finally swore his allegiance to Ash as his loyal Pokemon, and they were unstoppable. Charizard was the Luka Doncic of the Pokemon League. This guy was unstoppable ever since they teamed up, and they even won the Orange Islands together. Things were finally looking consistently up for this lizard. No one was really a challenge for Ash and Charizard, and they even went to the Johto region, and that was even easier for Charizard. He had basically no threats throughout the Johto region at all. Word was spreading around fast that Ash was a trainer that was able to tame this powerful Charizard, that they got invited to the Charizard Valley, and everything changed from that point. The Charizard Valley is a place where only the best Charizards live. They eat, sleep, fight alongside each other to only improve as a Charizard. Liza is the leader of this valley, and she wanted to test Ash's Charizard skills to see where he compares with the rest of the Charizards. And Ash's Charizard was the weakest in the room. Seriously, there was not one Charizard that he was stronger than in that valley. They even wanted to test Ash's skills as a trainer to see if he knew how to fly with Charizard, and they were incapable of even flying together. Charizard was just a stroke of dumb luck, fighting low elo people, and when he finally got to the big leagues, it showed that he wasn't as good as he really thought he was. Once Liza saw Ash's Charizard's performance, she actually banished him from the kingdom since she did not think he was worthy at all from training there or even being around these Charizards. Charizard spent that entire night reflecting in the water on how to improve and become a better Pokemon. Even Team Rocket felt bad for Charizard getting outcasted by his own people, that they helped Charizard get back into the Charizard Valley by staging a Team Rocket attack and making Charizard be painted as the hero that saved everyone. Because of all of this, Charizard got invited to stay at the Charizard Valley to train and become as strong as possible. And with new opportunities presented with Charizard, that just means some doors have to close. And unfortunately, the door that has to close is Ash traveling with Charizard. Charizard was pretty down with just denying the offer and still traveling with Ash, but Ash knew what's best for Charizard is to stay with Charizard to get stronger and to be the best that he could possibly be. Charizard was pretty shocked by Ash's response, since he didn't think Ash would want him to go stay with these Charizards, but Ash knew it was for the greater good and left in tears, leaving Charizard behind at the Charcific Valley, promising to meet again as friends. And Ash went on to travel a bunch of other regions and periodically meeting Charizard throughout the way with little cameos, and even in Pokemon journeys reuniting with their original gang again for old time's sakes. But even though Charizard had it rough, arguably Greninja's story is just as intense. When Froakie first hatched from his egg, he was already very different from his group. While everyone else was having fun and partying, Froakie just wanted to train and get stronger. At first glance, the other Froakies thought our Froakie was just a little weird and just enjoyed training a lot, but these differences eventually turned into hate. They were so scared of the unknown that they decided to kick Froakie out of the group, leaving him out in the wild to be all alone. Some time has passed and Froakie has somehow made it to Professor Sycamore's lab, but there's one other issue with this Froakie. Whenever Professor Sycamore gives him out to a brand new trainer, Froakie always ends up getting returned or abandoned by that previous trainer. This is because Froakie believes he has such high potential that he won't let it be wasted by mediocre trainers. So he'll continue waiting at the lab until he finds someone worthy of his power. Some time has passed and that leads us to the first episode of the Pokemon X and Y anime, where Ash is landing into the Kalos region. And I gotta be honest for a second, this has to be one of Ash's best character designs yet. He looks so mature for his age compared to previous seasons, and this new design is actually quite telling on why Froakie gravitated towards Ash. Because while Ash was walking through the Kalos region, Froakie was following him within the shadows, and when Ash got into a battle with Team Rocket and Pikachu almost got hit by a devastating attack, Froakie jumped in the way, tanking the attack for Pikachu, wanting to help Ash. They ended up defeating Team Rocket, but Froakie was in critical condition, and they rushed him over to the professor's lab. And at this lab, Ash learned the truth. Professor Sycamore told Ash that this Froakie has actually been abandoned by its last trainer and really doesn't trust humans all that much and only wants to be raised by a strong trainer. Ash believed that Froakie was actually a good Pokemon and that he just needed the right opportunity to unlock his true potential, and this was proven even further where Team Rocket stole Professor Sycamore's Garchomp and he started tweaking out, but Froakie in the end ended up saving the day, protecting the Garchomp. Because of all this, Froakie realized Ash's love for Pokemon and realized that Ash would actually be a worthy trainer for him, and Ash thought likewise, and ever since then, Froakie joined Ash's team, being one of his aces. And you would think from here that the story goes smooth sailing with them becoming the best of friends, but the story actually gets so much more complicated. Since Froakie has actually never worked within a team, he actually struggled a lot with teamwork, especially in the early episodes where Froakie would not listen to Ash's instructions and always just do what he sees fit. This behavior actually costed Froakie a battle against a fletchling, destroying his self-confidence because he knew he had the power to win the battle, but he just lost because of his own thoughts. And when Froakie applied this, he became better than ever, being able to defeat this fletchling in a rematch. And with all that being said and done, Froakie ended up enjoying his time on Ash's team and made some pretty good friends. But what Froakie didn't realize is that he was creating even greater rivals. One of the rivals that were brewing up was this ninja that said Ash's Froakie was actually slow and he had a Frogadier himself, and he said his Frogadier was way more faster and better than Ash's Froakie. Ash didn't take this lightly and challenged him to a battle. And that's when they learned real quick that they are not on top. They got absolutely destroyed. They got beat so bad they were pretty bummed out about it, but the ninja actually offered to train Froakie, which they did. They taught Froakie how to be more agile on water, be more stealth, and overall become a better Pokemon, and they said they'll meet them again and hope that Froakie gotten stronger. Taking all this info in, you would think Froakie would put his head down and try to become stronger than that Frogadier, but Froakie actually made a brand new rival on his own team. In a later episode, there was a Hawlucha that Ash wanted to catch, so he sent out Froakie, and they got into a very heated battle, which resulted into a draw. Ash still ended up catching Hawlucha, but Froakie just didn't want to work with Hawlucha, and Hawlucha did not respect Froakie at all. Ash even took them out in a double battle, and they completely lost it, bickering against each other and did not work together. Ash realized this wasn't working, and it wasn't until Ash's life was in danger the two Pokemon actually teamed up, set their differences aside, and realized that they could work together. So we now managed to get an established Ash's team, and Froakie's looking pretty good. But later in the timeline, Ash meets the ninja trainer again, finding him going down a river unconscious. When they wake him up, they realize that he actually has a Greninja now, not a Frogadier. They ask Ash for their help to defeat the Barbaracle, so Greninja and Froakie put their differences aside and team up to fight the Barbaracle. The fight wasn't going the greatest. Greninja and Froakie teamed up, but they weren't winning at all. Greninja also looked like he was out for the count, and Barbaracle was going in to do the finishing blow on Froakie, but Froakie decided to evolve into Frogadier to be able to destroy the Barbaracle, showing us his true strength and using his new move Razor Shell. At this point, Frogadier became one of the aces on Ash's team. He showed his true potential, being able to defeat an opponent way stronger than him and saving the Greninja. It seemed like Frogadier almost surpassed his rival, but he developed a brand new one in the process. In a later episode, Ash meets a kid named Sawyer, and he sends out his Trico, and Frogadier and Hulucha verse them in a double battle. Ash's team completely dominated the battle, but the next day Sawyer came back and Trico had evolved into a Grovyle. We got to see how Frogadier would handle an even matchup where he even had the type disadvantage, and Frogadier did not disappoint. He made use of his crazy speed, juking out Grovyle, and finished the battle off with the move Water Pulse. But at the end, Frogadier did give Grovyle his respect, and they mutually respected each other, knowing that someday he would be a very formidable foe. As we continue on with Ash and Greninja's journey, something interesting happened. When they went up against the gym leader Olympia, she had to reveal a revelation that she had. She prophesied that Ash's Greninja is actually special and that he has some dormant power deep inside that he just hasn't awakened yet. She also verbally let Ash know about Greninja's backstory and how he was abandoned when he was younger and looking for a strong trainer his entire life. This motivated Ash a lot, and he resonated with Greninja, knowing his pain, and promised Greninja that he would try his absolute best to make sure that he reaches his full potential and he'll use him in many battles. Funny enough, they went to immediately fight the gym leader after this, and Greninja and Talonflame won in a double battle using a group attack that we haven't seen them use before. After hearing all this from the gym battle, Ash thought it would be pretty smart to get some more information about Greninja, so they went over to the Ninja Village to actually understand what special power Greninja has deep inside. Here we learn that thousands of years ago, there was an ancient Greninja that had a form that people have never seen before, and he used it to protect the village. While we're learning all this, it gets interrupted because the Ninja Village is under attack. There's a big battle outside of the village, and there's a Bisharp going absolutely crazy. Frogadier's rival, Greninja, tries to fight off the Bisharp but gets absolutely destroyed. Ash sends out Frogadier and Pikachu, and they're trying their absolute best to defeat this Bisharp, but nothing is working against him. Bisharp has them all knocked down, and it seemed like it was over. Bisharp was commanded to use Shadow Claw to finish off Pikachu, but Frogadier jumped in the way, blocking the attack and choosing to evolve into Greninja to protect his friends. Greninja learned the move Water Shuriken, which is one of his signature attacks, and fired it off, but something weird started to happen. Ash felt a strong connection between him and Greninja's eyes started glowing red, and they felt even closer than ever. And Greninja had a water aura surrounding him. We couldn't really see his face, but this Greninja had definitely gotten stronger, and little did Ash and Greninja know, this is the first time they would have used Bond Phenomenon. Not much is known about this transformation, but what we do know is that it's only achievable between certain trainers and Pokemon, like a 1 in a million chance. When this transformation happens, the Pokemon and the trainer are one, so much to the point where when the Pokemon takes damage, the trainer takes damage too. Greninja used his newfound power to absolutely destroy the Bisharp and even surpass his old rival, the other Greninja. Everything was looking good from here. Greninja evolved, protect the village, and even unlocked a brand new form. But Greninja's true stories and real challenges were about to unfold in a way they could have never expected. There were a few instances after this where Ash and Greninja would accidentally tap into the form, but they wouldn't really understand what was going on. The form would also put too much of a strain on Ash's body, which would make him pass out from time to time when activating it, which was really dangerous. Clement made a machine, and he discovered that Ash and Greninja need to be fully in sync to be able to master this form. And while they were doing more training on this, Ash ran into Sawyer again, and he had a rematch with his Sceptile. This Sceptile was no joke now. He grew up. He knew a bunch of dragon type moves and Bullet Seed and Razor Leaf. The battle was getting tough for Greninja, but Ash and Greninja felt in sync, activated their Bond Phenomenon, and completely destroyed Sceptile. But this caught the attention of a trainer in the stands, his name being Alon. Alon was completely shocked that a trainer was able to have a Mega Evolution type transformation without a Mega Stone, so he knew he had to challenge Ash to a battle. Alon revealed to Ash that the ace of his team is his Charizard, Mega Charizard X, and he went head to head with Greninja, completely destroying Greninja, forcing him to transform into Ash Greninja form, but they still lost. Ash and Greninja were pretty bummed out about this, so they got back to training to try to master their new form so they could beat Alon, and when they thought they had a good gripe on it, they challenged Alon again. And I've gotta say, up until this point in the anime, this is one of the most intense fights we've seen. Ash and Greninja were seriously going all out against Alon and his Charizard, and it seriously looked like Greninja was gonna win the fight. But when Charizard transformed into Mega Charizard X, he blasted a flamethrower at Greninja, then hit him with a super effective Thunder Punch. This forced the Battle Bond transformation again, and the battle was looking so even. Greninja and Mega Charizard were going head to head, but it all started catching up to Ash. Ash could not withstand the damage Greninja took, and he passed out. He woke up in the hospital with all his friends surrounding him, and they were a little worried, but they were happy that Ash was safe. And Ash told Alon that he wants to battle him again at the Pokemon Kalos League, and Alon said that he'll compete. Ash and Greninja were a little down, so they started doing some more training, and then they ran into the champion of the Kalos region, Diantha. Diantha had caught wind that there was a trainer going around with a Pokemon that had a Mega Evolution-like transformation, and she wanted to see it for herself, so they challenged each other to a battle. Ash and Greninja did not hold back. They activated their bomb phenomenon, having that water aura around them, and they got super fast, and they were actually doing really well up against Diantha's Gardevoir. So Diantha had to respond to this, and she Mega Evolved too. This battle was getting so intense. Gardevoir was throwing out Shadow Balls, Greninja was making Shadow Clones, and this truly felt like a championship level battle. Greninja knew he had to do something if he wanted to win this battle, so he took all the energy from the outside of his body and put it onto his back, turning it into a big water shuriken, revealing his face for the first time. Greninja threw his new water shuriken at Diantha's Shadow Ball and cut right through it. But this newfound power was too much for Ash, and Ash passed out, making them lose the battle. Ash and Greninja's confidence didn't get any better from this loss, since they've been losing a lot recently and they really wanted to get better, and Ash felt deep inside he wasn't a good enough trainer for Greninja. They had a rematch with Sawyer and they actually lost against his Sceptile. They didn't lose because they were weak, they lost because Ash's confidence was very low that he couldn't do the Battle Bond transformation anymore with Greninja. All of this was seriously sending Ash down a spiral, making him question his abilities as a Pokemon trainer as a whole, because days ago he was able to beat Sawyer, but now he's losing to him, and he can't even transform anymore. Ash was developing Imposter Syndrome. Imposter Syndrome is where someone is feeling anxious and not feeling the success internally, even though to everybody else they're doing really well. Nobody else thought Ash was fraudulent, only him. Ash decided to try to move on, and they went to Snowbell City to get the last gym badge, and when Ash first challenged the gym leader Wolfric, it wasn't going well. Halucha had already lost, and Talonflame took a big beating too. It was only left to Greninja. Ash tried to tap into the Battle Bomb form, and it worked. Ash and Greninja got their spark back, right? But even with this transformation, they still ended up taking major attacks from Wolfric and losing ultimately to a Gyro Ball. This sent Ash over the edge. They lost again. Later that night, Ash told Greninja how he is really feeling, how he feels like he was being a big letdown, and he was sorry that he's not capable of mastering the transformation for Greninja. So what Ash did is that he left everybody and went off to the forest alone to think. Greninja also was feeling kind of down too, since Ash and Greninja do share some degree of emotions, and Greninja also went off by himself. While Ash was out in the forest, he was helping a wild Pokemon, and the weather started getting worse, and Greninja and Squishy realized Ash was in trouble. They sensed it. They ended up rushing to Ash's aid, and Ash was falling down a cliff, but Greninja saved Ash at the last second. Ash was so excited that his Pokemon came to his rescue, but Ash also let go of the wild Pokemon, and they needed to save him fast. And in that moment, without any hesitation, Ash and Greninja activated Battle Bond, and Greninja jumped down trying to save the Pokemon, and Ash served as Greninja's vision, and Greninja served as the physical body, being able to save the Pokemon. Ash and Greninja were really happy they were able to save the Pokemon, and Ash came to the realization that the Battle Bond transformation should be treated as one, not like two entities, but one together. Greninja agreed on this, and because of their mutual understanding, they finally mastered Battle Bond. Ash and Greninja went back to challenge Wolf Glick, and they versed his Mega Obama-Snow. And in this battle, we saw for the first time Ash and Greninja fully transform into Ash Greninja mode, mastering the battle bond and going head-to-head with the 8th Gym Leader's Pokemon, and Greninja came out on top. With all that being said and done, Ash and Greninja got their 8th Gym Badge, and now they're ready for the Kalos League, where all of their rivals will be in one place to prove that they're the best of the best. When Ash entered the tournament, he was already on everyone's radars. A bunch of people would come up to him, even news reporters, wanting to see his new transformation with Greninja that no one's ever seen before, making Ash's battles some of the most viewed ones in the Kalos region. And the people weren't disappointed. Ash got his first round against this kid with an Altaria, and Greninja completely decimated it. All of Ash's friends and rivals were also competing in the Kalos League tournament, and they all had different various challenges. But we finally made it to the semi-finals, one of Greninja's most notable matches. Greninja versus Sceptile. They started off the battle playing no game. Sawyer used Mega Evolution on Sceptile, showing off Sceptile's new form, Mega Sceptile, and he used Frenzy Plant to transform the entire arena with vines. Ash and Greninja used Battle Bond to transform, and they dodged the Frenzy Plant vines and used Cut to destroy them. After dodging a bunch of attacks, Greninja goes in on Sceptile and uses Aerial Ace with some of the smoothest animations we've seen in Pokemon, but Sceptile caught Greninja off guard using Leaf Storm. Greninja and Sceptile fought neck and neck, clashing with Leaf Blade and the Water Shuriken back and forth. Ash was seriously feeling the effects of Greninja taking all this damage onto himself, but Ash knew he had to hold on strong so he doesn't lose the battle. Ash and Greninja were fully synced, being able to dodge all of Sceptile's vines, moving left and right, and they knew they had to go in for a finishing blow. Greninja awakened the Shuriken on his back and jumped high in the sky and used the move Double Team, paying homage to Naruto with a bunch of his shadow clones, and used Rasa and Shuriken. Sceptile tried to block it with Leaf Storm, but it wasn't enough. Greninja's Water Shuriken hit Sceptile, and Ash and Greninja won the battle, even with the type disadvantage. And with this, Greninja ended the long rivalry with Sceptile, coming out on top and being able to move to the finals with Ash versus Alon. Now this battle is very important for Ash. This is his first time ever making it to the finals in the Pokemon League, and it wasn't looking good. Ash was down to his last Pokemon, Greninja. It was Greninja versus Charizard, the fated matchup that was meant to be. Greninja went in knowing he has the type advantage and got a decent cut in on Charizard, and Ash and Greninja took it as seriously as possible and transformed immediately into Ash Greninja. Alon chose to keep the same energy since he knew if he didn't transform now he would lose, and he transformed into Mega Charizard X, also giving him a neutral advantage because Mega Charizard X is not weak to water types anymore. Alon's Charizard went in for a Dragon Claw, and Ash's Greninja went in and clashed against it too, and they were having some of the greatest hand-to-hand combat we've seen yet in this series. Charizard tried to use Thunder Punch to try to one-shot Greninja, but Ash was smart and told Greninja to use Water Shuriken to deflect the Thunder Punches. Greninja got a clean hit against Alon's Charizard and sent him flying all the way back, and Ash knew it was his opportunity to win. Ash told Greninja to use Water Shuriken. Ash and Alon were simultaneously thinking at the same time that no matter who loses, this has been one of the best battles of their entire lives. Then, Ash's Greninja proceeds to make the biggest Water Shuriken we've seen in the entire series. Alon starts getting scared and tells Charizard to use Blast Burn. Greninja lets off his greatest Shuriken, sending it straight at Mega Charizard, and the Blast Burn gets closer to Greninja, and both of the moves hit each of the Pokemon simultaneously. This created a big explosion, and nobody in the entire arena knew what was happening, and then the smoke started to clear up. We could see Ash's Greninja standing tall, and Alon's Charizard almost fall to the ground. But in the moment, Ash's Greninja fell. Ash lost the battle. Even though Ash and Greninja lost, it wasn't like last time. They were actually proud because they gave it their all and they just lost to a better opponent, and Alon was crowned the champion of the tournament. Before the gang even had time to relax, Team Flare had an evil plan brewing in the back, and Ash and Greninja were at the core of it because the leader of Team Flare was trying to use Ash and Greninja's battle bond to use for evil purposes, but in the end, Ash and Greninja broke free because of their battle bond, and Alon teamed up with them to defeat Team Flare. But we did have an issue with the giant rock shaped like Zygarde trying to destroy the entire world, and all of the champions that were here at this point ended up teaming together to defeat the big rock. Because of all this, Ash's Greninja and Alon's team were named the Heroes of Kalos because they did save the world from this Zygarde. It was looking really good for Ash and Greninja. Even though they didn't win the Pokemon Championship, they did end up saving the world, which was a plus. But something came up. Greninja could actually sense that the evil roots were still popping up around Kalos, and Squishy actually suggested if Greninja could go on a journey with them to help cut down the rocks from time to time so that another evil phenomenon doesn't develop or old Team Flare members don't take advantage of this situation. Ash was really hurt after hearing this news, but he knew Greninja would be serving a much greater purpose, constantly saving the lives of others than coming back to Kanto with him. So Ash and Greninja said farewell. They gave each other a handshake and gave each other a big hug, and Ash promised to meet them again. And we didn't see Ash's Greninja for a very long time in the Pokemon animes, not until Pokemon Journeys. In Pokemon Journeys, Ash had a Lucario and he was having a bit of trouble tapping into his aura and sometimes Mega Evolution. So Ash thought it would be a good idea to make Lucario meet up with Greninja since he felt the same type of energy back then with Lucario. When we make it to the Kalos region, we can actually see the evil vines are still infecting their region, and out of nowhere, Ash's Greninja appears back again and meets up with Ash and Lucario, saving them from the vines. Ash is so happy to see Greninja again, and he actually asks Greninja for a favor, if he can 1v1 him and Lucario, and help train Lucario so he doesn't have any self-doubt about his ability. Greninja agrees to help out Ash, and they get right to the battle. Lucario realizes very quickly he's outmatched for Ash's Greninja, and he completely loses it. Lucario ends up getting really sad and runs away, but when Ash wants to go after Lucario, Greninja says he'll take you from here and talk to Lucario. Lucario and Greninja end up having a heart-to-heart conversation, which I wish I could tell you what they were saying, but they literally just talked in Pokemon language, so I can only assume that he was giving him good advice. The advice Greninja gave Lucario was so good because Lucario was able to respect Greninja after this point and no longer be jealous of him. And the training paid off because when Lucario met back up with Ash, he was able to learn Aura Spear and do a really big attack. By the end of all this, Ash completed his original mission on trying to get Lucario to tap in with his aura energy, and Ash thanked Greninja, and they were off saying farewell again. And that seemed to be it for Greninja. He headed off, and Ash tells Go that even if him and Greninja are far apart, Ash will always have a strong connection with Greninja to know if he's well. Greninja definitely has one of the more complex stories in the Pokemon anime, starting off from a little Froakie and becoming a world-class Pokemon. But my personal favorite story in the entire franchise has to be the ace of the Alola region, Incineroar. In the beginning of the Alola season in the Pokemon anime, Ash encounters a Litten who is pretty nice and wants to play. Rotom Dex explains that this is pretty strange since Littens don't trust anyone at all. Ash, being the gullible kid that he is, wanted to give Litten a piece of his sandwich, but when you give someone an inch, they take a mile because Litten snatched the entire sandwich and dipped. Ash fell for Litten's plan. They tried to catch up to Litten to understand why he did that, but he just gets away. And while Litten was running, he ended up encountering a Alolan Persian that just wanted all the smoke, and this Persian just didn't want to see Litten happy since he stole his sandwich and tricked Litten into burning the sandwich. So Litten's back to square one. He has no food, and most people would have called it quits here. You stole the food and you fail, but Litten is a certified demon because he goes back for round 2 stealing more food. When Ash encounters his gang, he lets them know that there's a Litten running around and stealing food, and they let him know that he's actually been doing this for a while. And the question on everyone's mind is, why is Litten stealing people's food? And the answer to that question isn't so nice. When we head over to Litten's house, we find him bringing food to a Stoutland, which he considers his master. This Stoutland is very sick and doesn't have enough energy to bring food of its own, so Litten roams around the city and brings food back for him. Stoutland tries to give Litten the food that he brings, but Litten always refuses it, since the only thing that makes his Litten happy is seeing this Stoutland. In return, this Stoutland tries to train Litten by helping him get better at using his fire and commanding him and giving him tidbits on how to be more powerful. Later that night when Litten was sleeping, the dark side must have been strong with him because just like Anakin Skywalker, Litten is getting some crazy dreams of his master dying. The same dream repeats over and over of Litten trying to wake up Stoutland from his sleep, but he never wakes up. This scares Litten, even waking him up from his sleep, but he tries to pay little mind to it. A few days later, Ash is taking a run, and he encounters this Litten being cornered by a Persian trying to kill him over a damn berry. Ash comes down to try to stop the fight and tells Persian that it's not that deep, it's only one berry, but this Persian wants blood. Pikachu jumps into the mix and completely wipes the Persian, but when we pan over to Litten, he's completely tired and defeated, but only one thing is on his mind, delivering that berry to the Stoutland. Ash tries to help this Litten out by bringing him to a Pokemon Center, but Litten completely refuses to, because in Litten's mind, Ash is just another thief that's trying to steal his berry from Stoutland. But Litten almost passes out from exhaustion, so Ash takes Litten by force to a Pokemon Center, but makes sure to bring its berry with him. When Nurse Joy heals Litten up, she lets Ash know that Litten needs to rest and not run around, but Litten immediately books it and runs for the door. Ash ends up catching up to Litten and tells Litten to just trust him, since his injuries are just gonna end up getting worse the more he runs around. Ash ends up bringing Litten back to his place, and later that night they end up having a heart-to-heart discussion where Ash is letting Litten know that he honestly only wants the best for him, and he understands that there's probably a lot going on to his life and it's bigger than him just stealing food. Litten ends up trusting Ash enough to bring him towards his home to see the sick Scoutland. Ash fully understands the full picture. He admits that he originally wanted to add Litten onto his team, but now that he's actually taking care of his master, there's no way he could possibly do that, and he wants to do anything he can help to help this Scoutland. While they're discussing this, the Persian comes around the corner for some reason, stalking Litten and still wants revenge. The Persian challenges Litten to a 1v1, and Ash could have stepped in and just stopped this, but he let Litten fight his own battle. Scoutland was watching too and gave Litten some tidbits on how to defeat this Persian, and Litten led off its first powerful attack against this Persian, winning the battle. After all this, you would think Litten was locked in with Ash and trusted him, but when Ash came to visit Litten the next day to bring him food so he wouldn't have to scavenge anymore, Litten had moved away. Litten's paranoia had gotten the best of him, since in Litten's eyes, it's Scoutland and him versus the entire world, and even though Ash did a really kind thing and he likes him, he just can't trust him. So we actually didn't see Litten for a while in the Pokemon anime, and it wasn't until a later episode where Team Rocket was after Ash's Rowlet and Populo, where they got lost in the forest and met Litten. These Pokemon explained to Litten that they were lost and they were trying to get back to their trainer, which was Ash, and Litten actually led them to their home, where the Scoutland lived, which was under a bridge, not the home we last saw them at. Litten comes to Scoutland and asks his master on what he should do with these Pokemon, and after Scoutland took a closer look at these Pokemon, he told Litten to help them return back to Ash, to repay the favor that Ash did to them a while back. So while Litten tries to lead them back to Ash, they end up encountering Team Rocket again and getting captured. But there's a twist. While Litten was captured, he let Meowth know his backstory, letting him know that he's the way he is because of all the conditions he was brought up, and all the Pokemon in the area started crying since Litten's backstory was so sad. So sad to the point where Team Rocket felt bad for Litten and offered him a spot on the team, as long as Litten just left behind the Populo and Rowlet. Populo and Rowlet were scared on the decision Litten was going to make, because yes, Litten's freedom would be guaranteed if he goes to Team Rocket, but then they would 100% have no way of getting out of the cage. Litten ends up accepting to deal with Team Rocket since he just met these Pokemon today, and while Meowth was going to free Litten, he double crosses them and frees Rowlet and Populo. And they end up doing a group attack and sending off Team Rocket, and Ash comes upstairs and finally finds his Pokemon who went missing, and they let him know that it's because of Litten that they're saved. Ash tries to thank Litten and ask him what's up with Scoutland, but Litten, who is still scared of humans, leaves and runs away without telling Ash anything, but Ash still has an open mind saying that he'll meet Litten again. And Ash was right. In a later episode, he encountered Litten at a market, and he followed Litten all the way to his new home under the bridge, where he watched him practicing the move Fire Fang with Snoutland. Snoutland continued to give Litten pointers on how to perfect the move, but Litten was still struggling. Ash left to give Litten some space, but then later that day, Litten came running frantically towards Ash. Litten was in trouble. He forced Ash to follow him back down to the bridge, where we can see Snoutland is in a super worse condition than we saw him earlier today. Ash immediately understands what's going on and understands that Snoutland needs help ASAP, so Ash actually picks him up and drags him all the way to the Pokemon Center, awaiting Nurse Joy's care. When Snoutland finally made it to the Pokemon Center, Nurse Joy and Chansey worked their hardest on Snoutland all night long, but to no avail. Nurse Joy came out to explain the situation to Ash, but before Litten could hear it, he ran inside to see Snoutland. While Litten was inside checking on his friend, outside Nurse Joy explained to Ash that Snoutland doesn't have much time and he's getting old. It's not that he's sick or has a disease, his time is just coming. Ash understands the situation and wants to be there for Litten when Snoutland's time comes. Meowth is also lurking behind the corner, and he feels extremely sad for Litten since he feels like no Pokemon should have to go through what Litten's about to go through, the loss of a loved one. Ash left for a moment to go get food for Litten and Snoutland, but when he came back, Litten and Snoutland were missing. Ash and Pikachu run, trying to find out where Stoutland and Litten went, but on their way to try to find them, Meowth actually stops them and gives them a heart-to-heart conversation, letting Ash know that he has to be there for Litten for what's about to happen, since Litten's about to be all alone. Litten ended up bringing Stoutland back to their home, and Litten was practicing the move Fire Fang, not yet perfected, but it was getting better, and Stoutland took notice of this. Litten also noticed that Stoutland was getting tired, so he decided to take a rest with him, and while Litten was sleeping, he had another dream. A dream where he was running and Stoutland was getting farther and farther away from him until he eventually disappeared. And when Litten woke up, that's exactly what happened. Stoutland was gone. Litten desperately searched around the entire island of Alola trying to find Stoutland, since he was trying to hang on to the glimmer of hope that Stoutland just ran away or something and that he wasn't dead. But Litten came to the cruel realization that Stoutland was gone and passed away and wanted to die in peace, not in front of Litten. While Litten was wandering home, he saw a dust cloud, hoping that it was maybe Stoutland, but it was actually just a tree, symbolizing Stoutland passing on because the single leaf fell off the tree, landing onto the couch. And then it started raining. Raining very hard, since sometimes Pokemon can't cry, and symbolically this rain was making sure Litten's tears were felt, and it was a pretty sad scene in the Pokemon anime. Ash and Professor Kukui just found Litten crying out to the withered tree in the rain all by himself. Litten walked back over to the couch where the soul leaf was and decided to lay there, not moving. Even in the distance, Meowth felt sad for Litten's loss of Stoutland. Ash knew Litten was going through a harsh time, so every day Ash came over to check up on Litten, making sure that he was getting better, but Litten just seemed the same. He kept bringing food and Litten wouldn't eat it. Even from time to time, Meowth would come over in secret trying to help Litten and cheer him up, but Litten really just didn't want to talk to anybody. It showed the unity that Litten's pain brought together by making everyone try to cheer him up. But then eventually, the light at the end of the tunnel showed. The rain stopped, and the soul leaf Litten was hanging onto blew away. And in the distance, Litten could see Stoutland's spirit in the clouds, waving him goodbye. Litten got the closure that he wanted after the death of Stoutland, and he was actually able to join Ash's team after this, since Ash was beside him throughout the entire process. Even Meowth in the distance saw this and was happy to see the ending of Litten's story arc going along with Ash, saying that it's for the better even though they're going to be enemies now. And that should be the end, right? Ash helps Litten get through the trauma of losing a loved one, and he joins Ash's team and everything's happily ever after. But Litten's biggest challenge was yet to come. In a later episode where Ash and Litten were chilling and watching TV, they end up seeing an Incineroar on TV at the Battle Royale, and he's got 20 consecutive wins. This lights a passion in Litten, since someone a part of his bloodline is going so crazy on television, so Litten pulls up to the Battle Royale and challenges Incineroar to a battle. And even though Litten wasn't supposed to hop on the Battle Royale stage, Incineroar plays along since he sees a burning passion in this young Pokemon. And this Incineroar put Litten into a pack. Litten jumped into the battle using Fire Fang, Incineroar caught it and used Throat Chop on Litten, one-shotting him. Litten was pretty sad from this defeat, but it also gave him motivation to want to beat Incineroar, and Incineroar acknowledged Litten as a rival since he hasn't met a Pokemon this fired up to get strong. The next day, Master Royale and Incineroar pulled up on Ash and Litten's block and challenged him to another battle because they wanted Litten to get stronger at a faster rate. When they got into the heat of the battle, Incineroar was completely dominating, but he didn't want to just mess around. He was actually trying to teach Litten how to use some of his moves, and this battle made Litten be able to master the move Flame Charge. Even though Litten now mastered this move, Incineroar took it a step too far. He started crushing Litten with his bare hands. This was so tough on Litten that it forced him to evolve into Torracat, unlocking a huge boost in strength with this evolution. They continued fighting the battle, going neck and neck, but in the end, Incineroar used Throat Chop to show Torracat he's not that guy and prove that Torracat has a long way to go. Even though Ash and Torracat lost, some of them are really sad because they knew that they had the potential to completely beat these guys in the future and they just had to get stronger. But earlier in this video, I mentioned that this rivalry actually transcends time, and that's actually true. In a later episode, Celebi, the time legendary Pokemon, sends Ash back into the past, where Incineroar and Master Royale are kids. When Ash meets them, he doesn't recognize this as Master Royale, and there's no way Master Royale would recognize this as Ash since he never met him in the timeline yet. But Master Royale challenges challenges Ash to a battle with his Litten while Ash is using his Torracat. And Torracat basically gets his get back in the past because he completely bodies this Litten. Master Royale was pretty sad at this defeat, but he vowed to become just as strong as Ash's Torracat, which is ironic because in the future he definitely is. Master Royale makes a vow to Litten that they never want to lose another battle again, and Ash is pretty happy at their resolution, but before they get to change names, Celebi sends Ash back to his proper timeline. And when Ash gets back to the present, if it wasn't obvious enough, Master Royale is actually Professor Kukui. Now, a lot of time have passed, and Ash and Torracat are growing together with a strong bond, and they even make occasional cameos at the Battle Royale to help out Incineroar when he's in a bit of trouble. But it was all leading up to one grand thing, the Alola Pokemon League, where Torracat would want to get his get back on Incineroar to prove that he can beat Incineroar as a Torracat. And this Alola League final battle was hype between Ash and Professor Kukui that they even started off the battle with Torracat and Incineroar. The start of this battle wasn't looking good for Torracat. Incineroar bulked up and got some major buffs, and they were counterattacking everything Torracat was throwing at him. But Torracat wasn't weak either. Incineroar threw out Darkest Lariat. If you didn't know, that's Incineroar's signature move, and Torracat dodges it. Incineroar was pretty happy that Torracat became worthy of a full-on fight, and Incineroar used the move Blast Burn. This move was such a massive ball of fire hurling right towards Torracat, and Torracat tanked it like a champ and absorbed it into the bell on Torracat's neck. Doing this though had some massive effects on Torracat, because yes, it was pretty hyped that Torracat was able to absorb Incineroar's massive fire attack, but Torracat only can do so much, so Ash decided to return it for a bit to rest. Ash sent out Lycanroc to deal with Incineroar for a little bit, which was a pretty smart move on Ash's part. And Lycanroc got a devastating hit on Incineroar, so Professor Kukui sent back Incineroar into his Pokeball to rest so he can have the final battle with Torracat. And this battle was neck and neck with some of the best animation we've seen in a Pokemon battle to date. Incineroar and Torracat were showing us all what fire-type Pokemon are made of. Torracat blasted a Fire Blast at Incineroar, but Incineroar tanked it. Torracat went in to try to finish Incineroar off with one of his signature attacks that he learned from his deceased friend Scoutland, Fire Fang, and it was about to work, but Incineroar caught him. And it seemed like it was over. Torracat was back in the same position he was when he was a Litten, in the hands of Incineroar, helpless and can't do a thing. Incineroar ended up using Throat Chop on Torracat. Everyone thought the battle was over, but Torracat didn't give up. It used one of its strongest moves yet, Revenge. Revenge is a move that if you get hit by it, you end up dealing double damage to your opponent. And that's exactly what happened to Incineroar, inflicting major damage upon him. Both of their lives were hanging on by a thread, and they knew they had to end the battle quickly. Incineroar used Inferno Overdrive and tried to attack Litten with it. Litten powered up his Revenge, and Incineroar used Throat Chop as a final battle, colliding into the fire to decide who the winner is. After both attacks hit, they were both left standing, but Incineroar fell first. Torracat won the battle. Because of Torracat finally being able to complete its goal of defeating Incineroar, it chose to finally evolve into an Incineroar, coming full circle from when it was once a little Litten into a very powerful Incineroar. And funny enough, we actually never really saw Ash use this Incineroar since the season kind of ended and Ash kind of axed this Pokemon, but we won't talk about that. But a Pokemon Ash refuses to axe is Pikachu, and his story starts when he was a Pichu. When Pikachu was a baby Pokemon, he was all alone, abandoned by his group because his electricity was unpredictable and uncontrollable. While Pikachu was roaming around by himself, he bumped into a group of Coughings, which ended up poisoning him and dropping him down a mountain, where he landed into the arms of a Kangaskhan. And ever since then, they were locked in. Kangaskhan treated Pichu as one of her own, since Pichu was a baby Pokemon that was abandoned and it would be cruel to just leave him out by himself. Pichu also considered these Kangaskhan's his family since they ended up bonding really well together after traveling for so long, and even considering the baby Kangaskhan its little brother. Even though everything seemed fine, there was one major problem the mother Kangaskhan was hiding from Pichu. And it's the fact that mother Kangaskhan's are only meant to be taking care of one baby Pokemon. The mother Kangaskhan was getting really tired carrying around two baby Pokemon and even having to split the food resources amongst two Pokemon. And Pichu started taking note of this and even started feeling really bad for being around the Kangaskhan and tried to leave, but the mother Kangaskhan, regardless of all this, still wanted to take care of Pichu and would never let him leave since she realized that he needs a home. Later that night, Kangaskhan brought Pichu and her baby into a cave so they could get some rest, and that night Pichu made the tough decision. Pichu thought that he would be better off leaving them so that the baby Kangaskhan can get all the nourishment and attention that it needs, and Pichu should just go back to the wild. So sadly that night, that's what Pichu did. He left his brother and mother without saying anything and just waved goodbye. And through all this emotional build-up, the Pichu evolved into the Pikachu that we know and love today, because Pichus evolved through their happiness level, and Pikachu was feeling a lot of grave emotion while leaving his mother. So fast forwarding a bit between now and the first episode of the first Pokemon anime, which is about 6 years, Professor Oak catches Pikachu. And on Ash's first day for becoming a Pokemon trainer, he misses the opportunity to get his starter Pokemon, and he gets left with Pikachu, and he was held off for a reason. I don't know what Pikachu saw between leaving Kangaskhan and now, but he's very angry and doesn't have the same personality. He's just stubborn and useless and doesn't want anything to do with Ash, and he also gained a bit of weight. On their first adventure, Ash and Pikachu were roaming around and they encounter a Sparrow. Pikachu uses Thunder Shock on the Sparrow, and Sparrow is a sore loser and calls his gang to back them up. And these Sparrows have shooters because the second they caught up to Pikachu, they jumped him and tried to kill him. Even though Ash just met Pikachu, he vows to save Pikachu from this situation, but Pikachu doesn't care about Ash and tries to run ahead but gets jumped even more. Ash picks up Pikachu, who got knocked out by the Sparrows, and jumps down a river so the Sparrows wouldn't follow them. At the end of this river, they end up meeting Misty, and Misty sees Pikachu's condition and says they immediately need a doctor. But in the corner of Ash's eyes, the Sparrows are still chasing after these kids, so Ash steals Misty's bike to try to get away, and I didn't know Ash was cold like this. While Ash is riding this bike, it starts raining and Pikachu is holding on to his dear life. The Sparrows are still chasing this 10-year-old kid and a dying rodent. The Sparrows catch up to Ash and start pecking him, which makes him fall off the cliff and lose the bike. Pikachu also falls off the bike and has no energy left. Ash is out of all his options, except one. Put Pikachu back inside of his Pokeball. If you didn't know, Pikachu absolutely hates going inside his Pokeball since he hates being isolated and alone and feeling like he's abandoned. But Ash begs Pikachu to get inside the Pokeball, and if he does, he'll never have to get inside of it again. He just wants to save Pikachu's life. While the Sparrows are closing in on them, Ash gets up and vows to protect Pikachu even if it costs him his life. And when all hope was lost and the Sparrows are about to do the finishing blows, Pikachu, instead of getting inside the Pokeball, jumps on top of Ash's shoulder and shows us the true power that he has inside, using a move to simultaneously wipe out all the Sparrows. This Pikachu is OP. In the process of this, Pikachu ended up frying Misty's bike, but when they woke up, there was a rainbow over their head and the legendary Pokemon Ho-Oh was gracing them. And ever since then, Ash and Pikachu were locked in. Pikachu respected Ash and Ash respected Pikachu. From this point forward, Pikachu is Ash's star Pokemon, and they went on to catch loads of friends and defeat Brock to get the Pewter City Gym Badge and Misty to get the Cerulean Gym Badge. Pikachu was also very smart versing Brock. Since he had the type disadvantage, he set off the sprinklers, and when there was water all over Onix, he zapped him and won the battle. Everything was looking up until Ash and Pikachu versed the third gym leader, Lieutenant Surge. The star Pokemon of the third gym is Raichu, the evolution to Pikachu. And when Ash went up against his Raichu for the first time, they got absolutely bodied. Pikachu saw the gap in power between a Pikachu and a Raichu. Lieutenant Surge told them straight to their face, the only way they're gonna beat him is by evolving this weak Pikachu into a Raichu so he can unlock his true power. When Pikachu was in the hospital after his brutal defeat, Nurse Joy actually came up to Ash and gave him a Thunderstone, letting him know that this is the only way to evolve Pikachu to a Raichu by touching this stone. Ash was left with a pretty tough decision if he wants to evolve Pikachu, but he was gonna make it be a group decision and get Pikachu's input. When Ash presented the idea to Pikachu, he was more for pushing the idea of evolution, but then Pikachu had a major prep talk with Ash, basically saying that he wants to win by his own power and slap the Thunderstone out of Ash's hands. Well, technically Pikachu hit Ash's hands, since if he touched the Thunderstone at all, he would have evolved. Ash and Pikachu figured out that for Raichu to be so strong, he had to sacrifice something, and he sacrificed his speed. So when they came back for round 2, they knew exactly how to counter Raichu, which they did, and they ended up winning the battle, proving that Pikachu is just as strong as Raichu, if not stronger. This revelation was important to Pikachu since he never really wanted to evolve into Raichu, and many future opportunities are presented to him to evolve, but ultimately he always stays the lovable Pikachu that he is. And that would be the end of that, right? Pikachu figures out that he always wants to be a Pikachu and wants to travel along Ash's journey, but there is a hiccup along the way. In a later episode where Ash and Pikachu are traveling through a forest, Pikachu ends up saving a baby Pikachu from dying in a river. Because of this, the group of Pikachus in this forest praise Ash's Pikachu for his heroic efforts. Pikachu started hanging out with them a lot more, and they really respected Ash's Pikachu, even initiating him as one of their leaders. And Ash was taking notice of this, but not in a good way. He was getting a little bit jealous that Pikachu was spending a lot of time with them, but he also wanted the best for Pikachu, so Ash made a very impulsive decision. That night, without even discussing it to Pikachu fully, he just tells Pikachu he's gonna leave him here so he can spend time with the Pikachus in the wild, since that's where he belongs, and he's gonna leave and continue his journey. Brock and Misty were super confused by Ash's actions, and Pikachu was the most confused, since yeah, he did like the wild Pikachus, but Ash was always his #1 priority. So while Ash was leaving in a pretty emotional scene, Pikachu subverted his expectations by deciding to come along with Ash, and the wild Pikachu ended up saying goodbye to our Pikachu. It was a really heartwarming scene, and it proved that Ash and Pikachu's bond cannot be broken. This was proven even further in the Pokemon movie, where, if you didn't know, Ash died and got turned to stone, but Pikachu and the rest of the Pokemon's tears were so powerful that it was able to dissolve Ash from turning into stone and bring him back to life. After all that, through thick and thin, Ash and Pikachu were able to gather all 8 gym badges so they'd be able to enter the Indigo League while having stalkers on their tail. But I'll make a video on these guys later. After this, Ash and Pikachu entered the Indigo League, and as most of us know, Ash lost it, and he went into a pretty depressive slump. But the only Pokemon that was able to cheer Ash up and make him bounce back from this depressive slump was Pikachu, kind of a full circle of their entire journey, since in episode 1, it was Ash dedicating himself to Pikachu, and now in this final episode, Pikachu fully dedicated himself to Ash. Ash committed to going to the Orange Islands, which is another part in the Kanto region, and they even won the tournament there, and that seems to be the end of Ash and Pikachu's journey in the Kanto region. Next up is Bulbasaur, being the first Kanto starter Ash finds in the Pokemon story. Bulbasaur's story starts off in the beginning of the first season of the Pokemon anime, where Ash is a new trainer, and he only has 3 Pokemon on his team: Pikachu, Pidgeotto, and Butterfree. While the gang is roaming, trying to get to Vermilion City, they get lost in the forest. Ash and Misty have a competition on who's gonna catch an Oddish, and Misty completely bodies this Oddish with her Sturmry, and right before she's about to catch this Pokemon, Bulbasaur comes out of nowhere and slaps that Pokeball out the way, letting Ash and Misty know to get off of his turf and not catch his Pokemon. Since Bulbasaur is the leader of this forest, and he really hates it when humans come by, since he sees them as only doing bad things, either coming in and trying to catch his Pokemon or ruin his community, so Bulbasaur just hates all humans. And to add insult to injury, when Ash whips out his Pokédex to learn more about this Pokemon, the Pokédex starts yapping, saying they don't know if Bulbasaur is a Pokemon or a plant. This obviously gets Bulbasaur mad, and he one-shots Misty Sturmry. Ash jumped into the mix wanting to catch Bulbasaur, so he sends out Butterfree trying to use sleep powder to put Bulbasaur to sleep, but Bulbasaur's not having none of that and used the wind against Butterfree and put Butterfree to sleep and one-shotted him. This Bulbasaur is OP. Through all this commotion that was going on, the Oddish that Misty was originally trying to catch ended up dipping, and Bulbasaur followed afterwards. They got away. Ash and the gang wanted to follow this Bulbasaur since they didn't want to let him get away, which led them to a bridge. Brock lets the gang know that he does not see a bridge on the map that he's looking on, and right as he says that, the bridge ends up collapsing. This Bulbasaur created a big bridge to try to kill these kids. Brock was holding on to the bridge and ended up falling into the river. Ash and Misty were the only 2 left on the bridge and ended up climbing out, escaping Bulbasaur's trap, but Brock is now gone. Ash and Misty set out to try to find Brock, and while Misty was walking, she steps into a pre-placed frost trap, making Misty fall into the hole. Ash helps Misty up, but they start noticing that it's getting really suspicious how many traps are getting placed around them. They continue going on further, and Ash and Misty end up stepping on a vine in the ground, being trapped into a net. Bulbasaur has captured Ash, Misty, and Pikachu. Now, I won't lie, if I were them, I'd be pretty salty since this Bulbasaur is up 3-0 against us. But the question still remains, why is Bulbasaur trying so hard to prevent these trainers from following him? Bulbasaur leaves the gang out to dry and gives them one last warning to stop following them. A few hours pass and Brock comes around the corner and frees up Ash and Misty. They end up asking Brock what happened to him since last they saw of him he fell down the bridge into a river, and Brock ends up admitting that a random girl came and saved his life from drowning in the river. And I'm not overlooking into this, Brock admits he was going to die if this girl didn't save him. I forgot how harsh this first season of the Pokemon anime was. Brock ends up leading the gang back to the girl's house, and her name is Melanie, and Melanie is actually considered one of the only humans that is the protector of this village. In this village, injured or abandoned Pokemon come and stay so that they can recover and go back into the wild. Melanie makes the gang promise that they're not going to capture any Pokemon in this forest since they're really just trying to vibe, relax, and recover. And Misty went up to Oddish and apologized for the earlier encounter. And as Misty was apologizing, Bulbasaur came out of nowhere and tackled Misty onto the ground. Ash and Misty were seriously wondering what's wrong with this Bulbasaur, so Ash escalates the situation further by talking trash to Bulbasaur, saying he was going to beat his ass anyways, and Bulbasaur ran away. And as this scrap was about to go down, Melanie got into the middle of them and told them to just stop and be friends, and Melanie doesn't want to see a trainer or a Pokemon fight. Bulbasaur, being super uncomfortable with trainers being here, tried to push Ash and Misty out of the forest since he really doesn't want them being here, and he just thinks that all these trainers are gonna come and ruin what's good for them. The show makes it evidently clear that Bulbasaur is having severe symptoms of PTSD, because throughout Bulbasaur's entire life, he's been designated as the leader of this forest to protect all the Pokemon. And from Bulbasaur's perspective, anytime a human has came around into this forest, it's only been bad news, where the human either comes and captures a Pokemon, taking him away from the home, or humans abuse Pokemon, making them have to stay at this place and seek refuge away from humans. Even though Elaine tries to tell Bulbasaur that these humans may be different, Bulbasaur's theory gets proven again because Team Rocket pulls up out of nowhere again and does their normal Team Rocket shenanigans. Ash ends up beating them, sending Team Rocket away from the village, and it actually gave Bulbasaur an extreme amount of respect for Ash, since this is the first time in Bulbasaur's life he's actually seen a human stick up for Pokemon and protect everyone from the village. Elaine lets Ash know that the main reason why she does her job working in this village is because she loves seeing Pokemon grow up and go back into the wild or find a strong trainer that bonds with them and is really nice with them. And Elaine feels that Bulbasaur would be a perfect fit for Ash. She ends up gifting Bulbasaur to Ash, saying that Bulbasaur would be a really great fit on Ash's team and he shows really good qualities as a Pokemon trainer. Ash and Bulbasaur get into a mini Pokemon fight, but Ash ends up ultimately catching Bulbasaur, adding him on the team as the first Kanto starter on Ash's team. And you would think that would be the end of this story, right? Bulbasaur gives up his role as the leader of the village and joins Ash's team, and they travel and become the best of friends, but this story actually gets a lot more complicated. In later episodes of the Pokemon anime, Ash ends up capturing Charmander and Squirtle, and they all end up becoming really great friends with Bulbasaur, even in later episodes having a group hug with Ash when they thought they were gonna die in a snowy forest. Later on in the future episode, Ash's Pokemon gets stranded on an island of giant Pokemon, and in this episode, all the Pokemon can actually talk, and they end up talking about feelings towards their trainers. Ash's Pokemon end up saying that they really like him, but Bulbasaur actually feels like Ash had abandoned him and tells the group that he's scared of this abandonment. Squirtle ends up reassuring Bulbasaur that Ash would never abandon them, and at the end of the episode where they reunite with Ash, Bulbasaur and Squirtle's friendship grew very strong, and they became the best of friends throughout the rest of the series. Charmander got left out of this bromance trio though, since when Charmander evolved into Charmeleon, he got a really bad attitude which completely destroyed his friendship with Bulbasaur, and they never really hanged out like that again. Because of the devastating effects that the once innocent Charmander had on the team, being a bratty Charizard, Bulbasaur actually never wanted to evolve since he feared that he would end up being exactly like Charizard, not listening to Ash, and he really liked Ash as a trainer and didn't want to disappoint Ash in the future and become a brat just like Charmander if he evolves. This ideology from Bulbasaur had some serious consequences, because in a later episode where Bulbasaur was versing a Rhyhorn, he got hit and almost lost the battle, and the battle had to pause because Bulbasaur got a mysterious bump over his head and the bulge on his back started glowing. Ash rushed Bulbasaur to the Pokemon Center since he was super confused about what was going on with his Pokemon, but Bulbasaur knew deep inside that he's been suppressing his evolution for a while. When Nurse Joy took a look at Bulbasaur, she even let Ash know that Bulbasaur is ready to evolve, and a bunch of Bulbasaurs gathered during this day to evolve in a group. Ash was super hyped about this news and couldn't wait to see Bulbasaur's evolution. Bulbasaur was overhearing all of this and he was conflicted. He didn't want to evolve since he really just wanted to be strong as a Bulbasaur, but he knew it would make his trainer happy. So later that night, Bulbasaur snuck out, and while he was sneaking out, Pikachu noticed him and followed him. Pikachu and Bulbasaur ended up having a really heart-to-heart conversation on a hill where Bulbasaur and Pikachu were talking about their feelings about evolution and how they both really don't want to evolve since they're both in the same boat. They just want to be strong the way they are. And as Bulbasaur came to this realization, out of nowhere a herd of Bulbasaurs came out with their vines and kidnapped our Bulbasaur, taking him away. Pikachu rushed back to the Pokemon Center and woke up Ash, letting him know Bulbasaur has been kidnapped. Ash, Misty, and Brock run into the forest to try to find Bulbasaur, and when they enter, vines behind them shut them in. From the distance, Ash and the gang were observing the ritual that were going on. All the Bulbasaur were chanting and making this big tree grow and blossom into a cherry tree. And when the tree blossomed, the King Venusaur came out and blessed the rest of the Bulbasaurs with their presence. They all started singing and chanting, and all the Bulbasaurs started forcefully evolving into Ivysaurs because it's a part of their ritual where all the Bulbasaurs gather to evolve. All of them were evolving except one, Ash's Bulbasaur. This is one of the first Pokemon in the series that we ever see actively resist a forceful evolution. The King Venusaur takes note of this and asks Bulbasaur what's going on, and in their Pokemon language, Bulbasaur basically tells the King Venusaur he doesn't want to evolve. They start beefing back and forth, and all the Ivysaurs start surrounding Bulbasaur. They're pissed because in their eyes, Bulbasaur ruined the evolution festival by not evolving. This Venusaur got so mad that he said, nah, I'm not listening to this Bulbasaur any longer, and whipped out a Vine Whip to try to execute the Bulbasaur, but Ash finally came out of hiding and tanked the shot for Bulbasaur. Ash starts letting all the Venusaurs know that you just can't force evolution onto somebody, and if Bulbasaur wants to stay a Bulbasaur, he can, and he's fine just the way he is. Ash also goes up to Bulbasaur and apologizes for encouraging him to evolve, since he wasn't really thinking about his feelings, and Ash was only thinking about becoming a strong trainer, not the Pokemon. You'd think the King Venusaur would actually understand where Ash was coming from, but he kind of just stared at Ash like he was having a yap session. But then Team Rocket came into the mix and kidnapped all the Venusaurs and Ivysaurs, and then our Bulbasaur chooses to use the move Solar Beam. And if you didn't know how significant this is, Bulbasaur only learns this move at level 36, meaning he is able to skip the Ivysaur evolution and go straight to a Venusaur. So this Bulbasaur is really like that. After all this, Bulbasaur finally gained the respect of the King Venusaur, and they shook hands and went their separate ways. Now this moment can be seen as one of the last times of Bulbasaur's character development throughout the Kanto region, because after this, the only significant plot points of his story is helping Ash out in the Indigo League, which, as we all know, he ultimately lost. But we shouldn't sleep on my boy Bulbasaur, because in the Johto region, he actually went kinda crazy. Since around this time, Ash had already released Squirtle and Bulbasaur, so Bulbasaur had all the attention he wanted to be the star of the team. And when you have a Bulbasaur that can use Solar Beam whenever he wants, the looks would be pretty deceiving, because you may think it's a weak Bulbasaur, but he can basically one-shot your entire team, which he did in the Johto region a lot. Ash's Bulbasaur now took on the role of being the mediator on Ash's team, always bringing in the balance, and even had a pretty funny gag with Ash's Heracross where he try to eat Bulbasaur, which we get into sketchy territory if we start looking deeper into it. Bulbasaur's role as the mediator got so big it actually led to his downfall. In a later episode where Ash goes back to the Oak's lab, Bulbasaur breaking up the dispute between all the lab Pokemon at Oak's lab, since apparently when Ash is gone and there's no Pokemon around, everyone just starts beefing. This actually made Ash and Professor Oak realize that Bulbasaur would actually be better off staying at the lab, being able to bring balance like the Avatar here instead of traveling on long journeys with Ash, since if they're gone for long periods of time, chaos will come loose. And that's kind of how Bulbasaur lost his spot on the team. He ended up doing the original goal when we first met him of protecting Pokemon around him and being a leader. Bulbasaur never had a central spot on Ash's team again. Yes, he did pop out from time to time in the Johto League and even in the Unova region and in Pokemon Journeys where the trio all links up again for old time's sakes, but it was never that central spotlight that Bulbasaur had throughout the early Johto seasons and the Kanto region. And speaking of the original gang, Squirtle is the last member of the Kanto trio, and his story is quite complex. So far, Ash's journey is looking pretty bright for being a new trainer. He's captured 5 Pokemon: Pikachu, Butterfree, Pidgeotto, Bulbasaur, and Charmander, but he's looking for a 6th, preferably a water type. While the gang is roaming through a route, they end up falling for a trap and falling into a hole, and right above them they see a group of Squirtles. Ash gets out of the hole and realizes that they're all Squirtles and says that he actually wants to catch one on his team since he will be able to beat Gary if he had his own Blastoise. Ash sends out Pikachu to deal with them, and Pikachu completely one-shots one of the Squirtles, and the leader of the Squirtle squad ends up having a stare down with Pikachu and makes the executive decision to run away. Officer Jenny pulls up because of all the commotion, and once the gang tells Officer Jenny their story, she lets them all know that this is a group of Squirtles known as the Squirtle Squad. They go around vandalizing, terrorizing, and just being a complete pain in the ass for everybody because they were abandoned by their original trainers many years ago. And not to be rude, but what is up with the Kanto region? Because so far, a bunch of Pokemon have been abused or abandoned by their trainers, so either nobody in the Kanto region cares about Pokemon rights, or everyone there is just plain evil.
Officer Jenny proceeds to let the gang know that she actually feels kind of bad for the Squirtles. She believes if they were brought up right and treated properly by humanity that they would have not ended up this way, and this resonates deeply with Ash, and he wants to befriend the Squirtles and hopefully bring them down on the right path. In the distance, Team Rocket for once is just chilling, and they have a picnic and they're trying to eat their food, but they get jumped by the Squirtle Squad telling them to give them all their food, and when they don't listen, they fall into the Squirtle Squad's traps, and they all end up eating Team Rocket's food anyways. The Squirtle Squad ends up tying up Team Rocket, and when Meowth asks to put them down, the Squirtles let them know that they don't trust them because Meowth is working with humans, and the Squirtle Squad does not rock with humans at all, and they just hate them completely. Then Meowth does a completely big brain play, and he starts acting like Jesse and James are his pets and saying that he actually owns them, and that it's actually a Pokemon-ruled society, not humans, so the Squirtles start trusting Meowth. Jesse and James actually take this as an opportunity to let the Squirtles know that if they do one thing, capturing Ash and Pikachu, that they'll end up giving them unlimited food source and that they're Team Rocket and they have the funding to back it. The Squirtles are weary at first, but they kind of end up trusting them. While the gang is out swimming, Pikachu ends up getting stung by a Goldeen, making him very sick, and out of nowhere, the Squirtle Squad just jumps the gang and ends up tying them up in a rope, and they end up realizing Team Rocket's behind all of this. The Squirtles end up bringing the gang into a cave, leaving them out to dry. And to be honest, watching this makes me question, can you even charge Pokemon with crimes? Because this is just plain kidnapping. Ash lets the Squirtles know that no matter what they do to him, he really needs to go get an antidote for Pikachu since he's really sick. And the leader of the Squirtle Squad actually grows a bit of a heart and lets Ash out on one condition. He has to come back. Ash obviously agrees to these terms since he wants to save Pikachu, and he's set to run free to get an antidote for the sick Pikachu. After roaming for a while, Ash finally finds a shop that can sell him an antidote, and when he's about to go in, Gary just slams the door on Ash's face, knocking him out cold. When Ash wakes up, he can hear Team Rocket inside the building, holding them at gunpoint to get gunpowder. And what is going on in the original season of the Pokemon anime? Because they got guns, robbings, trying to make bombs. This is a crazy season. Ash ends up getting the super potion and ends up coming back to his friends, which have all been untied by the Squirtles, and Misty lets Ash know that the Squirtle Squad actually wasn't going to do anything bad to them since they're not really evil, it's just like playing tricks. Ash ends up healing Pikachu, restoring him to a bit of health, but in the distance, Team Rocket's pulling up with bombs. They end up doing the usual, capturing Pikachu and throwing these bombs everywhere, causing a forest fire, and I think they were generally trying to kill these kids, so Squirtle and Ash end up teaming up, running through the bombs and shooting the parachute on Team Rocket's blimp, which ended up saving Pikachu, and this actually helped grow the bond between Ash and the leader of the Squirtle Squad, since the leader realized that some humans can actually be pretty nice and some Pokemon like Meowth can be pretty evil. The forest is still on fire due to Team Rocket, and all the Squirtle Squad pulls up and ends up putting the fire out with their water. Due to their bravery of actually sticking up for the townspeople, they end up actually being loved by the town and appointed as their Squirtle Squad firefighters. The gang ends up leaving the town since everything's done, and while they're about to leave, the leader of the Squirtle Squad is still following Ash, and Ash asks him if he wants to join his team. The Squirtle ends up taking off his shades, and we see his eyes for the first time, and he's filled with joy, wanting to actually be a companion to Ash. And ever since then, the rest is history. Squirtle ended up being locked in, and he ended up enjoying the other Pokemon on Ash's team, becoming really great friends, especially with Bulbasaur. The Kanto trio ended up being the dominant force on Ash's team, and they had some really great times together, especially in the episode where Ash got trapped in the snow biome, and it's pretty infamous where Charmander lights up his fire on his tail and warms up all the Pokemon for a group huddle. This moment solidified their unity throughout having everyone together on the team. But in a future episode in an island of giant Pokemon, Ash ends up getting separated from his group of Pokemon, and we get to hear the thoughts of the Pokemon on what they think about their trainers. Bulbasaur was actually pretty negative, thinking Ash had abandoned them and left them for better Pokemon, but Squirtle actually had major trust in Ash, believing that he was going to come back for them, which he did, which really shows how grateful Squirtle is and actually how he's came around from the trauma of being abandoned by whichever previous trainer he had. Later on in the story, where Charmander evolved into Charmeleon and Charizard, he ended up becoming pretty bratty, and this actually ended up shifting the dynamic of the team, putting more spotlight on Bulbasaur and Squirtle, which was pretty good, but we started to see Squirtle was actually one of the weaker Pokemon on Ash's teams, not really winning any gym battles and only just scraping by, just being more of a comedic relief. Now, this isn't confirmed, but I think the show heavily implies it, and it's my own personal theory, I believe too, that the rest of Ash's Pokemon actually didn't want to evolve anymore after seeing how much Charizard's personality changed from the once innocent Charmander to being one of the most brattiest Pokemon and not listening to a single instruction. Because Bulbasaur never actually wanted to evolve into Venusaur, as we know from later episodes, but Squirtle actually found the transformation of Blastoise pretty cool and always admiring him, so I believe at one point Squirtle did want to turn into a Blastoise, but for the rest of the series he chooses to never evolve. As we all know, Ash actually lost the first Indigo League, and Squirtle was low-key a bum in the tournament. He fell asleep to Butterfree and really contributed not that much to the tournament, so when Ash went over to the Orange Island, Squirtle was seriously trying to find a glow-up to actually help Ash on the team, since Charizard was slowly starting to listen to Ash and he was becoming an ace, and Bulbasaur learned the move Solar Beam, so Squirtle was really falling behind, and he actually learned the move Hydro Pump to pick up the slack and become a threat on Ash's team. Even in a later episode, Squirtle ends up meeting with a group of firefighting war turtles and proving to them that he's a firefighter too and putting out just as much fire as them. Ash ends up winning the Orange Islands with his pretty powerful team and brings Squirtle along to the Johto region. Squirtle was obviously well prepared for this region since he already traveled with Ash throughout the entire Kanto region, and he actually had to take a bit of a backseat along with Ash's Kanto Pokemon to make room for the new Johto Pokemon. But in a later episode where Ash enters a firefighting competition, Squirtle ends up meeting back up with the Squirtle Squad and the War Turtle Squad, and Squirtle ends up vibing really well with them, but the Squirtle Squad actually admits to Squirtle that they actually miss him and they miss having a leader that was in control and could guide them, since Squirtle was the group leader. By the end of the episode, Squirtle made the pretty tough decision to leave Ash's team and end up reuniting with his old friends to go back to the Kanto region and be a firefighter there, since Ash really didn't have that much use for Squirtle and he would be so much more useful saving lives in the Kanto region. After that, Squirtle was never officially on Ash's team again, but he did make some cameos from time to time helping Ash out in the Johto Pokemon League, and we even saw him a bit throughout more series in the Pokemon anime, like in Black and White. We saw him again in the Hoenn region 2, where the gang links up with him again, and most importantly in Pokemon Journeys, where Ash traveled back to Kanto with his original team and they end up finding Squirtle and realizing that he's gotten super popular. He's a Power Ranger type deal Squirtle, and they end up chatting and having a good time, but Squirtle is now a massive celebrity that goes around the Kanto region saving lives and being a firefighter. The Squirtle story is pretty cool since Squirtle was just a hooligan, but now he's just a world-renowned firefighter helping out a bunch of people in the Kanto region, which is a pretty good life for him. And that seems to be the end of all the starter Pokemon I've covered on the channel so far. So if you made it to the end, you're absolutely amazing, and please subscribe because we're so close to 50k, or click one of the 2 videos on your screen right now.